This is the heat pump controller, which is located downstairs here in the living room. So we use this as the thermostat for the heat pump. We don't use any third-party controls, and it uses weather compensation to determine the flow temperature given an outdoor temperature, and then we can then set the set point inside here for what temperature we want the room to get to. So this is our normal daytime set point of 19 degrees, and then it goes up to 20.5 in the evenings. So this first 9 months of having the heat pump, I've been doing quite a bit of experimentation, so I've not been running the same settings throughout the whole period, but I'll just show you what settings I've been running on for the past 6 months or so. So you enter service mode by pressing and holding the up and down arrow here, and the password is 0202, and then if we scroll down here to field setting value, probably some of the most important settings are here in water law, which is Samsung's name for weather compensation. So the first setting here is the outdoor temperature. This sets when you have the highest and the lowest flow temperatures. So I have the lowest flow temperature when the temperature is 14 degrees or more outside, and I have the highest flow temperature when it's 5 degrees or more outside. The water out temperature here that I've chosen, it's pretty much a flat flow temperature, maybe 1 degree of with only 1 degree of variation. Now this is not normal really, this is not how people normally run a heat pump. Usually you'd have a much greater variation between these two numbers. If, for example, when it's much colder outside, you need a higher flow temperature, and then when it's warmer outside, you could have a lower flow temperature. But because I've got such large radiators here, I've found that a 34 degree flow temperature is adequate, totally adequate to heat the house even down to -3 degrees outside. So I don't need a higher flow temperature than that. And you're probably asking, why don't I reduce the flow temperature lower than 33 degrees? You know, at like this time of year when it's much warmer outside. What I found is that this Samsung heat pump doesn't seem to like running below about 33, 34 degrees. If I go much below that, if I go down to as low as 30, the output goes it starts like cycling a bit. The output gets quite unstable, and actually the overall performance is actually lower. So they've obviously optimized the heat pump to work at a temperature of like around 33 degrees and above. The heat pump just runs a lot less during the fringe months as it does in the winter. So if you do have a Samsung heat pump, I'd highly recommend using this controller here as the main thermostat. Often this controller I've seen is it's installed like up in the plant cupboard or boiler room away from the main living space, and then other third-party controls are used for the thermostat. But that won't work nearly as well as you just using this as the thermostat. And to do that, you go into service mode and then choose indoor zone option, and choose standard temperature, and that should be indoor as opposed to water outlet. So that when you set that to indoor, this temperature here will now be the current room temperature, and you can just dial in what room temperature you want. So I run the heat pump on a schedule, which I'll show you here. So I have a setback temperature at night, and I'll also only heat the hot water at certain times of day. These are not quite in order, but you can see that the hot water turns on at 1:45 in the morning, and then turns off at 1:30 in the morning, so it gives it time to reheat during that time period. That's to coincide with my off-peak tariff. Then at 7 AM in the morning, I've got the heating. It comes on to 19 degrees every day, and then in the evening at 9:30 PM to coincide with the off-peak tariff time, the heating then increases to 20.5, and then overnight I've got the heating at 2:30 AM is when my Octopus Go cheap tariff finishes. It then goes on to a setback temperature of 18 degrees overnight, which usually means the heat pump is off throughout the night. But if the weather was very cold, it might come on for a little bit. I found it not super intuitive to learn how to set these schedules for the heating. You have to go into schedule, add schedule, and then the hot water schedules run the daily schedules there. But the central heating schedules are actually under weekly schedule, which is a bit confusing. Then if we go away, I turn the heat pump onto outing mode, which just keeps the living room at 16 degrees.